This is episode 107 of the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Cade, and today I'm speaking with Brett Wilson. Brett is the owner and creative director at SkyDance Mountain Audiobooks, a full-service audiobook production company based in Colorado. He is also a podcast host and producer for various businesses and organizations, including the Rocky Mountain Channel and Sullivandale Guest Ranch. He and his wife, Melissa, are passionate about books and all things equestrian. Their favorite date nights are spent at Barnes & Noble. When not riding or working with their horses, a Mustang and an Arabian, they can be found hiking on a trail somewhere in the Rockies with their dogs, Milo and Delilah. Saddle up for a conversation about all things audiobooks. Now, let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Cade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Cade, and today I have a special guest on the show. Brett Wilson is here to talk to us about audiobooks and audiobook production. So hi, Brett. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Carly. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. You know, this community is so incredible. Like, I'm always talking about authors uniting, and it's amazing the people that you meet just from knowing each other and being a part of the community. Margie Evans, who is a fellow horsebook author who's been on the show a couple times, actually connected us. So we're going to talk about some of the work you've done with her as well. But as people know, how I always like to start the show off, and Brett's got a cool story, is talking about how horses have touched your life. So Brett, talk to us about horses.
Yeah, this is my favorite part of the show, by the way. As I've been binge watching, I watched this part first. Well, my horse story starts back in a long time ago. I won't say what year, but I was 10 years old, and I talked my parents into getting me a horse. Well, first of all, they said, if you want a horse, you're going to have to take lessons. And so they bought me about a year's worth of horseback riding lessons. And it was all English. I lived in Maryland, grew up in Maryland, English equestrian. And a year went by pretty darn fast because I loved taking the lessons. I mean, you know, most of the time you hear about girls love horses. Well, this boy loved a horse. And they found the perfect horse for me. When I was 11, my dad said, okay, just before I turned 11, he said, for your 11th birthday, we'll get you a horse, but you have to build the fence. And so we had 2 acres that I took, and he made me do it all myself. And I built an electric fence for around 2 acres. And the day it was done, we did it like in 2 weeks or less in the summertime. And the day it was done, they backed up a horse trailer. My dad met somebody who had the perfect horse. She was a half quarter horse, quarter thoroughbred, quarter Arab. Oh, wow. And her name was Princess. And I had met her before, and I had ridden her before and trusted her. Didn't know what the heck I was doing, Carly. I was just crazy. He backed up the trailer, and I just took the lead rope. And I loved Native Americans. American Indians were my thing back then. I wanted to always move out west. And so I put it on, you know how they put the lead rope under there, or like a rope under there, like a bit, with no saddle. This is crazy. I can't believe I did this, but with no saddle, I jumped on her, ran up the hill, and she was great. And then we turned around and came back down. My parents are still standing by the trailer. And we had to have little white ribbons, little sheets tied around the electric fence so you could see it, because it's not a big visible thing. And she must have seen it at the last second and stopped, but I didn't. And I went flying off of her into the electric fence, got up shaky, and I said, I'm okay. I was afraid the trailer's still there. They might take her back. My first introduction into owning my own horse. And it was only uphill from there.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing story.
What else is crazy is where I got my first that's where I had my first paying job, is as a 12-year-old. I taught all the neighborhood kids how to horseback ride for $3 for a half-hour lesson.
Oh,
so again, didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I knew I loved horses and I wanted to just be around them.
That's amazing. And, I think the world needs more cowboys. I love hearing these stories
Yes.
about men getting into the horses because, there are a lot of women. That's where all the girls are. You made the right
Yeah.
decision. It's funny. When you first get a horse, nobody knows what they're doing, right? My story parallels. I was 10 when I had my first horse and we didn't know what we were doing, but man, do they teach you so many
They do.
lessons. Yeah.
Yes.
And you have a new addition to your herd. Do you want to talk?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My wife and I, over the years, have gone through about a dozen different horses, looking for ones for our daughter and for us for trail riding. And she's really into endurance riding. Melissa is.
Mm.
And so we've gone through a lot of horses, and we were down to one Arab, and that was her horse Colo, her baby, since she'd had for, I don't know, 10 years or more. And we have a friend where we're boarding Colo who said, I have a Mustang that I just acquired. It's a Devil's Garden Mustang, hasn't been ridden, barely been handled. If you want it, it's yours. And I was like, heck yes, I want to. I told, what's really crazy is about maybe a month or two before that, I told Melissa someday I would love to get and train a Mustang. Well, she's always learning. She's the real horse person in our family. I mean, she knows what's going on. She studies horses. She would claim that she doesn't, because the more you know, the more you know you don't know. And it's her. And so we've had him for about 2 months now, and she got on him about 3 weeks ago and has had 3 rides on him already. And I with one this last weekend without me leading. So he's just a willing little horse. Hunkapi is his name, or we call him Huni. It means I am one with everything in, I think it's Lakota.
Oh, I love that. That is such a great story.
He's a sweetheart. We just love him.
Isn't it funny how the universe works like that? You put it out into the world that you would love to one day own a Mustang, and then a week later, one enters your life.
I had never really thought that before. Any horse is good to me, but I said that out loud to Melissa. So like you said, you put it out there and watch what you look for.
Right, exactly. Words create your world.
Yes, they do. Oh my goodness.
That's amazing. And that so complements your love of the West too, to have a Mustang. And
yes.
did she adopt him through one of the programs or purchase
She
him?
did. I can't remember which one. Another interesting story. Tomorrow we're leaving to go up to Rock Springs, Wyoming, and pick up. She's going to pick another one, so we get to be there and watch this gal pick one out, and just making an overnight road trip to do it.
Oh my gosh, you have to make a video of that so people can follow the journey. That would be really cool.
That's cool. Great idea.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
So, I've had a lot of guests on the show, but I have not yet had someone with the experience to really talk and dive deep about audiobooks. So I'm so glad you're here today. I wanted to talk a little bit. So you are in the business of audiobook production from start to finish. SkyDance Mountain Books helps authors design, create, produce, publish, market, and sell their audiobooks. This is so exciting. Tell us a little bit about your business and some of the services that you offer. You offer a lot.
Yeah, thank you. So we some of what we offer is connected with other like book shepherds and that. So we make sure everybody is covered well. But SkyDance Mountain Audiobooks we try to be a full service one stop for independent authors and publishers, because it's a scary world out there. Not just scary, but overwhelming. If you ever go on voices.com, for instance, it says we have over 2 million voices to choose from over 160 countries. I don't even know where to begin with that. I don't know how to start. I know authors are creatives and they don't want to be pulled into something. They want to be guided gently. And so I just thought, well, let's create a safe and friendly environment where people feel like they are in a one-on-one. And we're not a big production company. We are expanding, but we're not a big company where you don't get to talk. You call the phone number and you get a voicemail. So we try to be very personalized, and 100% satisfaction guaranteed.
Oh, that's so amazing. And another thing I wanted to mention while I have you too, we're going to dive a little deeper into audiobooks in a second, but you also offer book trailer and meet the author video production. Do you want to talk a little bit about those two services too?
Sure.
Then we'll swing back over to audiobooks.
That's a side service. So I do work with the Rocky Mountain Channel here. It's a nature company, and quality video is really important to me. Just I'm around it all the time, and I do a podcast for the channel. And the guy that does the production there worked with Disney, and so I was impressed right away with anything I do. I want it to be really quality. Sometimes you see these book trailers that you can tell they took unsplash pictures, downloaded them, and then just tried to make a little story around them. And that's okay. That's better than nothing, I guess. But we wanted to offer a service where it really represents the book and the author well. And so the only downside is the cost would be either for travel, or if you live in Colorado and close by, well, we can get with you, because I think the author should be, unless they'd rather not be in the picture, I think the author should be a major part of it and tell their story along with the book, because it's their creative spirit coming out, and you want to capture that with these videos and trailers.
That is so cool. That's a great offering. And I really liked the concept of Meet the Author videos. It just really tells the story of who is this person, right? Because a lot of authors, they're behind the scenes. So people don't get to know, who they are. And I believe readers like to connect with the author in that way and get to know them better.
Yes, absolutely.
So, all right. So I already mentioned that Margie introduced us by way of my podcast, which is really neat. Two fellow podcasters meeting. Tell us how did you get into working with authors on their audio? Because I know you were telling me earlier your background. You do a lot with music and other things. How did it come around to authors?
Well, I think it goes way back to, first of all, my love for horses and books. That's incredible. That's even more of a blessing that I found you, because as a kid I grew up. I think I was 13. My favorite uncle, gave me a couple books. He gave me the Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings, and I loved them so much that I actually can't believe I did this either. I took one of those old time cassette recorders, and I started recording Lord of the Rings in my own voice as a 13 or 14-year-old, and then thought, this is an overwhelming job. I'd rather just read the books. Years later, let's see, it was back in 2010. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I was doing some podcasting, and I just noticed that audiobooks are really cool. I loved books on tape and would listen to my favorite stories while traveling or whatever. And you can pick those up at Cracker Barrel or whatever. And so it was already a love of mine. And I just wanted to create one, and I saw somebody asking. I was a publisher, an independent publisher here in Colorado, that had some really cool historic fiction. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, would you like an audiobook? I mean, just reached out. Would you like an audiobook of your story, of any of your stories? And they said, sure. It was Filter Press here in Palmer, Colorado. And nice couple, older couple who owned the company. And they gave me a shot at it. And it wasn't just an audiobook, but it was an enhanced audiobook with music and sound effects. And again, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It turned out good, but I got way underpaid only because I asked for less than I should have doing it. But it was a labor of love. And then 2 books later, somehow, and I don't remember exactly how we found Margie, but her book, Behind the Mist, she wanted an audiobook of that. Great little story for young adult or young readers, I should say, fantasy. And so we had a reader who was my mother-in-law, actually grew up she was in Texas, and her husband was a drive-time DJ, in the 70s, and he was well connected, and he had gotten her into doing acting and voice acting. She's got an excellent voice. She did the voiceover for this, as well as and then I did the sound effects. And it was an adventure again. And I was so grateful to Margie for giving me that opportunity, brought more books of the same kind of genre. And again, the West and horses are one of our biggest niches.
High five. I am all about the West and the horses.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and that's such a cool story. And I love how you mentioned, isn't it funny how the things that we loved when we were young and some of the things that we did actually can parallel. There's like a line from where we were to where we wind up in our lives. You were recording your own audiobook with a little handheld tape recorder way back when, and now look at what you're doing. You're like doing full scale production with sound effects and voice talent and music for people's audiobooks.
Isn't that crazy?
I think it's so neat. I think it's, you got to really look like, what did I love? And where is it still inserted in my life? I don't really think we ever deviate from those passions,
Yeah. I think for the younger members of your audience as well here, Carly, maybe that is a very good lesson if you're still kind of wondering, exactly where you should be, or feeling a little like you're wandering, wondering, look, like you said, look back at what it was that you really loved when you were growing up, because I bet you the passion was always hiding somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's like you mentioned, horses have always been there for you, and music and books, and it's all come full in the West, and it's all come full circle, and it's still there. Same for me, writing, horses, that it's always been there. Even if you divert from it, somehow it widens back up in your life, I think.
Absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit about this audio revolution. I know more and more people are moving to listening to their books rather than reading their books. Have you noticed that? Can you comment on that at all? Like, what do you think is happening now, and where do you think it's going to go with audio?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I had reached out to a few different people a few years ago, when I saw the audiobook industry growing, and I said, new authors, and I said, hey, your book would make I've previewed it. Your book would make a great audiobook. And they kind of looked like I had said we should make them, I don't know, a banana with peanut butter on it or something. Yeah, that would be nice. But what does that have to do with my book right now? They didn't catch the relevance of it, or that would be cool. Or maybe I should say that it was more like saying you should make a movie out of your book. And some of them were like, that's cool, but A, I can't afford it. B, I don't know if it would sell. And right now I'm just happy writing. It's turned around the last couple of years where people that I had originally reached out to are calling me and asking and saying, hey, I'm ready to do it. Our veterinarian, I think it was 2 years ago, I saw that he had a book and had talked to him. In fact, he gave it to us to read. That's how I found out. And I said, hey, this would make a great audiobook. And we met at Starbucks and talked about it. Well, last year he called and said, I have my second book coming out and I want to make both of them audiobooks. And I was just thrilled because it's called, in fact, I'll give a little shameless plug for this one too. It's Dr. Suit here in Colorado. And he wrote 2 books. This is book 2. I think we lent out book 1. It's called Finding James Harriet. This one is the sequel, Monkey Bars. And it's about a small town vet. Well, as somebody who graduates from vet school, immediately has big dreams of going to the fancy, glitzy vet clinic, being called there in California near the beach. Instead, he gets called to Birdie, Oklahoma, and has to deal with small town everything. And it's just a hilarious and heartwarming book. Anyway, I got a little down a rabbit hole, but I wanted to promote his book as well. It's so cool to see this audiobook revolution taking off. It's now almost $2.7 billion industry. And they're saying it's only expected to grow for the next 5 years for sure, up until 2027. Bigger than ebooks, Kindle books. It's a big industry. We just are happy to be riding the wave of it right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, your timing is perfect. And I love that your focus is on independent authors and independent publishers. I mean, we need support just as much as the big guys. So it's like really great that you've got that family welcoming, friendly feel. I really appreciate that. Would you agree that maybe the podcast thing kind of opened up the space a lot more for audiobooks? Because I hear you, like, on family road trips or whatever, go to the library, check out the books on tape, and it's the best way to do a long road trip. But do you think more people now are comfortable with audio given the availability of podcasts?
Yeah, when the Apple CarPlay came out, it seemed like a lot more people started just listening to what they wanted to, not just the radio. Mm-hmm. Even before that was happening. But the podcasting, it was a natural bridge between, listening to what you liked into, oh man, I love this book. I love this series. Going back, and of course, I bought all 3 Lord of the Rings on Audible right away, well acted out. But yeah, it has definitely led to a new revolution in listening. I think, I heard somebody talking about the fact that when COVID hit, they were afraid that all the drive time listening would just drop off and audiobooks would not be that relevant anymore. And they did for about the first month. I don't know what happened between March and April. And then all of a sudden they picked up and people started listening just in leisure in their easy chairs at home, or of course at the gym when they could go there, or working in the yard. But it's incredible that it not only picked up, but it's going higher and higher as an industry.
Yeah, that's so exciting. It's like a movie for your ears rather than your eyes.
Yeah, it makes it 3-dimensional, the story, if the narration is done right and if it's a good story to begin with.
Exactly. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about here. Now, well, first I want to cover this one because this is something that I've often heard other authors say. A lot of independent any author really is kind of struggling to make ends meet and, grow their revenue until they have, a lot of books in their backlist. What would you say to a financially nervous author about making an investment in producing an audiobook?
That's a good question. And I have a heart for, again, the independent authors. We're not all, rich and can afford to do that. But I think I would say the same thing I would say to a friend who wanted to write a book, but thought, I don't have the money to publish it or whatever. It's your dream. It's your baby. The audiobook industry is growing. I would encourage them to figure out a way to do it. Of course, do some shopping around. I loved what Mandy last episode you had out.
Mandy Flanders, yes.
Yes, said the rule of three, and I will invite people to do that with us too. Is check out 3 different voiceover artists, 3 different companies if you can, and find out who gives you the best rate, and will treat you like family, and give you what you're looking for. But there's crowdfunding. There's other ways. Artists are creative. We can get creative with our books and our audiobooks as well. And just don't give up on that dream. If you really believe in it and want to do it, you'll figure out a way. You've figured out how to write your book and release it in the first place. So,
and that's the funny thing too. I mean, once you write a book, there are expenses that go along with it, and you want to give it as much, that intellectual property, as much reach as it possibly can with a paperback and a ebook, and now audio has become such a big deal. It's an investment made, and within time, and hopefully you will earn that money back as more and more people discover your books and love it and recommend it. And then hopefully that income comes back to you. But it is an investment in your creative future, I think.
Yeah. And audiobooks, you make more royalties than you do on a Kindle or an ebook. Is that right? Now, so you've released audiobooks. Did you find that to be true as well?
Yes, actually, my audiobooks sell very, very well. The problem for me has been, though, that it takes a while for me to get the audiobook out after the release of the others. And sometimes people just want to chomp at the bit and read the series so much they go there. But I've had readers actually buy the audiobook after having bought the book because they like the listening experience too. So it's just another stream of revenue. It's another way to bring money in, and it's a way also that you're not alienating other readers. Maybe they're having a hard time reading anymore, or they prefer the audio format rather than reading. It's like you can open yourself up to a whole new audience of readers as well by having an audiobook.
Wow. I'd be interested, if you don't mind me asking, Carly, how was your audiobook production experience? How did you find it? And what made you decide to do that? Because that's kind of what people are looking at.
Yeah. Now you're a podcaster, so you're interviewing.
I'm sorry.
I'm happy to answer the question. That's funny. So my journey was a little bit different, I think, than probably someone who maybe would come and work with you, because I was looking around on your website, and I think you're reasonable. I think you've got great packages. Like, if I didn't already have my narrator, I would likely come to you, and maybe I will in my next series. But what happened was, I'm going to try and make this quick. I'm really big into lifting up dreamers or people with a creative passion. So years ago, when I was first writing In the Reins, my first book in my series, I was on a bus at a work function heading to some sort of conference. And I was sitting next to a woman who was friends with another woman that worked at my company. And they introduced us. And, we just got to talking because it was a long bus ride. I told her I was writing a book. She said, "Oh my gosh, I always wanted to do audiobooks. My dream is to be a voice narrator. I really would like to do this." She had already been doing some commercials for our company. She was the voice in our commercials. And I had heard her voice. I mean, she was fantastic. And I was like, "You would be a perfect fit for my book." And we talked to each other and we worked out a deal. And I said, she'd never done one before. I was like, she was familiar with the equipment and things. So, "Do you want to just give this a whirl?" And she was like, "Yeah, I want to give it a whirl." So we gave it a whirl together, and we had to figure out a lot of things on our own, like, the specifications and things like that. But overall, she's worth waiting for, because she's got a full-time job and a family and all this stuff. It takes a while. It takes me a while to get an audiobook out, but I'm giving her a platform to build her resume. And, I think maybe I probably got mine produced a little bit lower on the financial investment side, just because it was a friend and we were both giving each other a shot. So there's a lot of magical ways you can make things happen. And for me, this was how I made my audiobooks happen. Thanks for asking the question.
I love that story. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing, because I learned from authors, especially successful ones who are doing it. Yeah. No, I was going to ask you if you found that listening to, or I don't know if you read your books out loud, helped your writing at all. I know with authors, especially new ones I've talked to before, said it was so interesting because I felt like I wrote in short little sentences, you know what I mean? And instead it made you realize you need to vary up your sentences and the length of each paragraph or whatever, not just so what it would sound like out loud, not just, what it sounds like in your brain
head
when you're reading it in your head.
Absolutely. Actually, that's something that I always recommend to other authors, even if you're not intending to write an audiobook, to read it out loud or have someone read it out loud to you, because it does sound different when it's spoken aloud as opposed to just sitting with the manuscript and looking at it over a computer or even on paper. It sounds
Yeah.
different. The thing I noticed, I was able to notice a lot of repetitive words that I had used throughout my first book. But I'm pretty lucky. My husband actually reads the book to me after I've finished. I'll spend a little bit of time away from it, and then every night before we go to bed, he'll read me a few chapters, so I can just sit there and process it and make notes. So I would. That's a really good point you just made. It's very important to not only read your book but listen to your book, even if you're not
Yeah.
doing audio.
To listen to the rhythm of it too. There can be a
Absolutely.
beautiful rhythm in writing, and that's the way you hear it and notice it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
100%.
And you're lucky to have your husband be able to do that. That's wonderful.
I'm lucky I've written a book that he actually will read, because he's not a reader. So I intentionally wrote the chapters shorter, because I don't like to get to the place where you want to go to bed at night and there's like 400 pages left in the chapter. I like
Yeah.
mine to hit quick and then have a hook, so people are like, oh gosh, just one more, just one more.
That's what I love about, James Patterson. Good job.
Totally. So yeah, so basically this really flows into the next question I wanted to ask too. Talk to us about some audio best practices. Like, what does an author need to know to create a quality audiobook?
I think they need to know a good producer,
Mhm.
and that's where it all begins. Is either a good voiceover artist or a good producer, because just like with writing, you don't know until you start the process. And somebody like that, a good somebody with a talent for it, who's done it before, can save you a lot of headache and heartache and give you some good advice. Other than that, of course, again, read your book out loud before you ever do it in audio format, because you might start doing some rewrites like you were talking about.
Mhm.
That's really important. I'm finding out from people is they're just reading it out loud, and of course the quality and the passion has to be there for sure. But it's basic, and I don't mean to sound like but that is the short answer. If you have somebody who can help you, you don't have to worry about the rest. I do encourage people, if they want to read their own book. In fact, we have a service that we started here where it's a little less expensive, that we work with the authors who want to read their own books. There's some things to consider. You don't have to just, it does not qualify you, or it doesn't mean you're going to have a good audiobook if you have a good voice. You're in the entertainment industry. You've been there, and you chose somebody else, which is interesting because you could have read your own book. It is a labor of love. It takes a long time. You have to have a good quiet place in your house, or you can rent out some space. You either have to hire an engineer, sound engineer, somebody who can operate some equipment. But the service we offer is, if we teach people, we tell them what equipment to get. We give them a checklist. You can even find that on Audible or Amazon's wish list there for audiobook production. And you can get that. And then we will do the editing if you want us to. We'll do the mastering and help with the upload and the rest of the process. Make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed with your audiobook production. But so I encourage people to if that's something they'd like to look into, think it through. Know that it's going to be a lot of work, and just record just a little bit. You can do this on your iPhone. Record just a little bit. Read your best. Play it back and see what it sounds like. And then if you think it sounds good, ask your husband or wife or best friend or somebody maybe that you work with or go jogging with or whatever. What does this sound like to you? And you'll get the honest feedback, hopefully.
Yes, that's really great advice. My narrator, her name is Amanda Lamb, and she records the file. She's got a little studio downstairs in her basement, so she has all the equipment. And then I do have to get her files mastered. She sends them to me as she records them, and then I check them to make sure something isn't missed or they're in the right order or what have you. And then afterwards, I have to get the bulk mastered, because sound is paramount when it comes to an audiobook. And you can't just do it on your iPhone, like you said. You really do need people to assist you.
Yes, yeah.
Now, when an author comes to you and they would like to make an audiobook, like what can they bring to the table when they reach out to you to make your job easier?
It begins with a really good manuscript that's already finished, as we talked about, and their passion and good questions. Again, it's a simple not easy, but simple process. If you have the manuscript and you have a good producer, at least with SkyDance Mountain Audiobooks, with my company, it really, I am amazed and have a lot of gratitude for the authors who've come to us, because they just trust us with the process.
Mm.
We'll make sure that we ask them, but it's not rocket science at all. If you have a good manuscript to work from, that's about it. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but
Yeah.
that's what they need.
That's perfect. And word of mouth is so very important. When you do a good job with the work that you're doing, people will spread the word, and people will come to you based on the work you've done for other people. So I imagine that's probably that's why we're talking today.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, so basically an author would come to you, they would do some research on your website. They would choose like a package or which option they think would work best for them. You do a consultation with them and talk them through things. And then you're going forward. You are able to connect authors with professional voiceover talent to narrate their projects. You also do sound and music, or sound effects and music, which is pretty cool. How do you help authors connect the right voice to their books?
That's a good question. I do ask them up front, who do you picture, whether it's somebody from Hollywood or a rock star or somebody that you've seen on TV, who do you picture reading? Is this Little House on the Prairie? Is this Laura Ingalls Wilder? Is it Andy Griffith? Is it, you can kind of sense by what they say. And if they don't know, then we'll make suggestions and say, well, let me just send you a sample or a demo. And most of the time they like it. And again, I'm surprised how many people, because they haven't done the process, they just trust us to do it, which puts a lot more responsibility in our hands. And we want to, earn that respect and that trust.
It's fantastic. And I galloped around your website, obviously preparing for the interview, and you have samples up there where authors can go and listen to some of the chapters of audiobooks you've created. So if you want to, get an idea for what they sound like, you can go right there and check it out on the website. I'm
glad you mentioned that part too, because I wanted to talk about, I think just before the show, we talked a little bit about the fact that SkyDance Mountain Audiobooks is in a little bit of a growth transition, where we're reaching out to more narrators right now. I mentioned over 2 million voiceover actors out there in 160 countries. And we want to eliminate that immensely overwhelming task and knock it down to a couple dozen. Mm-hmm. And so we're right now expanding our talent pool, and we will have a voiceover artist that will suggest to you, and then it should make your job easier in looking for somebody.
That is
our job too.
Yeah, that is so great. I'm sending Amanda your way so you can connect with her, and maybe there's an opportunity there, because I think you would get along really, really well. She's fantastic. And then
I love it.
Yes, this is awesome. Supporting each other, small businesses unite. What do you think makes for a good audiobook? I mean, obviously we talked about sound, but like, how important is, or sound quality, how important are like music and sound effects? I mean, or is it really just getting the right voice acting out the novel or the book?
Music and sound effects, if you're going to do an enhanced audiobook, I should mention it's a little bit more expensive, quite a bit more expensive because of the time involved, but it is much more three-dimensional, obviously. How important is that? If I played you a video of a building falling down, being blown up, and we used destructive music and awe-inspiring, intense, just scary music, it would look appropriate. If I played Happy Birthday to You happening while the building's falling down, you get the picture.
Right.
It does have to line up. There is the need for the proper mood and feel for the music and sound to line up. But as far as the overall quality, what I think makes a good audiobook is passion. It's got to be a good book to begin with. Although, have you heard of ASMR? Can't remember what that. It's like a brain massage. Some people listen to music or words at night, not music, but you can go on YouTube and you'll hear people, and it's just this little brain massage it's a scientifically proven thing. Anyway, if somebody has a mesmerizing voice and it's a bad story, you can read me the phone book and I don't care. But as far as a book itself is concerned, it's got to have, to me, at least passion and be a good story. And then of course a good narrator, a good voiceover actor. And the sound quality is really important because it could be distracting otherwise.
Absolutely.
I once I read this series. I won't mention the name. It's back years ago that I loved this. It was a thriller series, and the author. I thought when it came out on audiobook, I listened to on audiobook, and the author had the worst voice in the whole world. And I loved the series, and I hated the audiobook. I had to just stop listening. And it was so funny. And it was a big author, a big name author too. And I was really surprised because, it would be really hard to mess up your own audiobook, but it was bad.
Wow. And that's why working with a professional that can give you an array of options to help you choose the right sort of voice for your book really, really makes a difference, because listening is a whole different realm and a new experience. I wanted to mention too, I mean, obviously you walked authors through the whole process, but you were actually able to help them load you provide files, you provide a physical audiobook if people want that, and then you're able to help them get the files loaded onto these various distribution sites. Can you talk a little bit about what that, those services that you offer there, what you have?
Yes, yeah. So it can be a little daunting. Again, if you're not a technical person, the sound specs for audiobooks for Audible, and I'm guessing with Findaway Voices too, is because I've always uploaded to Audible first and then use those same sound files. And I'm doing this in a studio, a music studio that I've worked in for years, and I've had the sound turned back because it was just a hair off. I mean, their specs are in a very narrow spectrum, and so that part's got to be done right from the beginning. Also, the audiobook artwork you can't just put up your rectangular book. It's got to be in a square at 2400 by 2400 pixels. And so we will create, from here, if we have all your artwork files, we'll turn it into an audiobook cover as well. So you don't have to worry about that. If you don't have your files separated into layers, we get creative. We figure out a way to do it and make it still look like your book. So far, we haven't been stumped yet. A little challenge, but not stumped. And so those two things right up off the start make what we do, we think, of value, because people don't have to worry about that. Audible will ACX, I should say, will return it to you. And it takes a while. You might think, oh, good, I've got my book uploaded, and then they come back rejected. And so it's important to have somebody who knows what they're doing do that part as well.
There's nothing more frustrating than having something you think is good to go, waiting for that approval process, and then having it rejected because one file did something funny. So it's nice to be able to put that in someone's hands that can manage all that stuff right from the get-go.
Yes. Although that being said, it's very important for the author to have listened to the project all the way through every detail. Don't trust us on that, because we don't know for sure. I've missed things. Well, anyway, that's another story.
That's true. An author should always listen to the final product. Don't just say, "Oh, it's good to go." Just like when we get our first preview paperbacks back, you need to go through it and read it again, because things get missed. It's just the nature of dealing with a book and that many works. It just happens. Yeah.
And Carly, that's why I respect authors so much. I've written one book, and that hasn't even been published. It was I'm a Jeep guide, Green Jeep Tourist guide for Rocky Mountain National Park on the side in the summertime for a few months, and just part-time. And I had done it so many times. I thought, just Old Fall River Road, I'd done 365 times. And I said, you know what? I could write about this. And I wrote the book, and the owner bought it for her guides. It's a guidebook for guides. And I thought, this is a lot of work. It had pictures involved. And I am so inspired. I have a couple other books that are fiction right now that I'm working on. That's why I'm in awe of you guys who are writers and authors, and who've actually done it from start to finish with your published book. So I really highly respect those who can go through this whole process and check mark those details and come out with a perfect product, or even one that's close. So hats off to you guys. Seriously.
You're so awesome. That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, even the best published books that are out there, there is no software that fixes everything. I read books that I bought, I buy wherever, and there's always a little hiccup, maybe one somewhere. It just is the nature of the business, but you can get it as close to perfect as you can by doing the work and reading or listening to something before it goes. Don't hit publish until you've double checked.
Yes.
And even then, you don't know.
Great advice.
How does the physical audiobook side work? What can an author get on that side that they could take to book signings and things like that?
So they'll come in, depending on how long your book is, they come in a CD set, and that requires a little bit more because you have to have the artwork again for the cover, and it depends on how many you want to have manufactured. It's a lot pricier than just having an audiobook, but it is a nice. We're getting less and less requests for that these days because they're so accessible on your iPhone. But it is a nice. I don't know. I love going into Barnes and Noble or other places and smelling a book, feeling, and even CDs. There's something different about owning this than something that could go away on the internet if I don't have service or whatever.
Totally.
Or my phone crashes. So it's not that we don't recommend it, but it's something that's done less. But it's the sound quality is the same. The process is the same until you come to replicating the discs themselves and printing the artwork.
Yeah, that's really neat. That's like a neat bonus that you can have for super fans or people that want audio to take. If you do a lot of book signings, it's definitely something to consider. That's really cool. Now,
you know, I was going to say, what else? It does make nice gifts at Christmas time for family or whatever, because it's, again, a tangible product as well. So yeah, that just hit me.
Yeah. And I've gotten that, lots of times, sometimes your storage fills up and you have to move things off or do things. And, it's like my mom's like, I want to listen to it again. I don't know what I did with it. So if I gave her one of those, she would be covered,
Yes. Yeah.
So
awesome.
That would be very neat. And then you mentioned too that a lot of your clients come from word of mouth because of the great work you've done with other authors. Is there anything else that you're doing to market your company and get the word out? I mean, obviously being on this podcast is part of a strategy, but how are you connecting with people or getting the word out about the great work you're doing?
Honest to goodness, I have not worked as hard on that as I need to. And it recently came to my attention myself that we really need to work more on the marketing side. I'm a creative. And so I'm working on getting that word out. I mentioned we are expanding right now. We just put together a Facebook page it's embarrassing, and I do have an Instagram page as well. But it has been word of mouth so far, and it up until this point that's worked okay. But okay isn't good enough for us anymore. We want to really get the word out. So can you ask me that in a few months?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you. I do believe in the importance of that, especially for our authors. I mentioned we're expanding our narrator pool, our voice actors pool. We have this family of authors that we want to keep in the family, or at least, take good care of them like we would a family. And so we're putting a store up where each of their books can be sold here too for a very small percent on our part. We really want the author to keep it. But I think it would help SkyDance Mountain Audiobooks as well, because that's where, if we have more people coming, and again, in these few niches that I mentioned, the equestrian, Western, personal growth, self-help, memoirs, and history, and spiritual. Those are the categories that we've seemed to attract, and would love to do more of. Not that it's closed to others, but that's been our family so far.
Yeah, your wheelhouse.
So anyway,
it's a good It's a good wheelhouse.
Exactly. Good. I like that. A wheelhouse. Thank you, Carly. Yeah. So putting up a store there as well, and then start driving traffic to that store would be part of our marketing plan here coming up soon.
Very cool. Yeah, it's like you have a catalog of all the projects you've worked on, and they can buy direct right from there. It makes total sense.
Yes, exactly.
Now, I like to ask this question because everybody has a little bit of a different perspective. For you, what has been the best part of being a creative business owner? But then on the flip side, what's been the most challenging part? I know you mentioned a little bit about getting up to speed with the marketing, but best and worst.
I think the best part for me is nobody telling me what to do. I get to get up in the morning and go right to work, and it just, I can set and order my day and be creative as much as I want. As far as the worst part, I think it's because nobody's telling me what to do, and I have to figure out what has to be done. And we were talking about marketing just a little before this, and sometimes you need a board member or somebody looking over your shoulder saying, "Hey, what about this? What about this?" So that's probably the hardest part of my working as an entrepreneur, is just having the wisdom, listening, and seeking, good advice and figuring it out, because as you know, things go wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's that drive. You have to have a drive, I think, to be an entrepreneur, and you obviously have that. It's wonderful not to have someone looking over your shoulder, but you have to strive and drive and really enjoy what you're doing, I think,
Yeah.
to make it really, really work. And it's clearly working for you. I love that.
Thank you.
And is there any advice you would give yourself before, or was there anything you would do differently before you produced your first bit of audio into the world? Is there something that you wished you had known?
Yeah, I love that question. Start earlier. As I told you, I did, but I didn't follow my inner dream, my inner passion for that. I tend to be a people pleaser
Mm.
just by nature. I'm an easygoing guy, laid back. I want everybody to be happy. Ask my wife. It's my job is to make sure everybody's getting along. And so I would be easily redirected if the path wasn't laid out right before me, or if somebody didn't say, "Hey, that's great, you ought to do it." I wish I had just listened to my heart and followed that right from the beginning. So that's my answer.
That's fantastic. So something's calling you forward. Go and grab it now. Don't wait 10 years, right? So,
Exactly. And
yeah,
we're going to mess up. Fail forward. Just learn from it. You learn by failing. That's the only way you're going to learn.
yeah.
And so, you know, back then we did have audiobooks, just like books on tape, on cassette tape, if anybody remembers what those sounded like. And so, yeah. In fact, when I was a little kid, my parents bought me one of those box sets. Now I'm really dating myself. It was a record player that came in a little, like a suitcase, and you
I
open
had
it
one
up.
of those. I had
Did
one
you
of those.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I loved that thing. And in fact, I've rediscovered, I used to listen to Tale Spinners all the time. I don't know if you remember the fairy tales, but they had Rip Van Winkle and Beauty and the Beast, and also Columbus and Sinbad and all those. But I would listen to them over and over and over again. And again, there was that sign that was something that was a passion to me. And I rediscovered some of them on YouTube recently. And it just took me back to my early boyhood days listening to that. Now, I wish I had just stuck with that, because I love creating content. I love working with other people, and I would have a much bigger backlist now if I had started a long time ago.
Yep, but it's never too late to start, so now
Never
you're
too
you're
late.
living the dream, and now you're creating those kind of moments that you had as a young man for a new generation, and you're working with independent authors, helping them bring their dreams to life. I mean, how that has to
Yeah.
be so rewarding.
Yeah. And I do want to say this for somebody that just heard what I just said. Yeah, I wish I had, but as they say, you should never should on yourself. Don't should.
Mhm.
I should have. You know what? Life is this broken road has brought me right where I'm supposed to be. And I recognize that. And so, like you said, it's never too late. Now's the time. And the wisdom and, and the technology is here now that makes it so much easier.
Oh, definitely. I mean, where would we be without technology? I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. It's just incredible
Yeah.
that we can do this. It's
Yes.
That's so amazing. Now, this is a sneaky question. Is there anything a listener might be surprised to learn about you? Like, do you always ride in chaps, or do you have a favorite hat, or
What a fun question. Uh, so yeah, here's one, and I'm not real proud of it, but I used to be a country music snob. I hated country music. I was a musician. I got into music. We actually moved to Nashville. I moved to Nashville back in the 90s and started a independent Christian record label. We got distribution. Things were going great, and I loved rock and roll. I loved pop. I loved Christian music. I hated country music. So one day we're working in this is Quad Studios, and I'm taking notes as a production assistant for this project, and somebody sticks their head in the studio and says, "Johnny Cash is in the building." And I was like, I looked up and it was like, poof, everybody was gone. I was like, Psh. That's my bigger regret, that I didn't go to meet Johnny
oh,
Cash.
you didn't go anyway? Oh
I
my
know. That's what kind of a country music snob I was. I'm ashamed to say, but that's probably, yeah, something that most people wouldn't know about me. But
That's
I'm
definitely
willing to admit.
surprising.
Yes. Now I'd be the first in line. I mean, I so respect that guy.
Yeah, that
And
is
country
crazy.
music. I love, the new country music and Rascal Flats and
Mhm.
that sound. I just do.
I was just gonna ask you, do you love it now, right? You keep
I
like
do.
the cowboy, the horses, the west,
Oh
and you
my
got the
goodness.
country music. That's so funny.
I don't know what I was thinking.
And
Our culture back in Maryland was different from the culture out here, and I just associated it with something that I didn't know anything about.
True that, and you're not alone. Back in the day in the 90s, I didn't like country music either. Like everybody
Really?
was listening to Garth Brooks, and I was like, oh no. I was like alternative rock and
Uh-huh.
and rock and roll and all that sort of stuff. And then, but then now I love it. So it's
Yep,
like tastes change.
they do.
Tastes change, but the thing that calls you forward, I think, is kind of always there. So
Carly, we evolved.
we evolved. We did.
We-
We evolved. I couldn't leave you hanging. I had to share that I had
yeah,
the same
thank you.
experience
I
too.
appreciate that.
Okay.
Me
What
too.
are you curious about? Like, what's next? I mean, you're already podcasting, you're developing your dream company, you're working with creatives on a daily basis. You're your own boss. Like, what's next? Any big things you're curious about? Are you going to make a movie?
I would love to. I actually would love to make this. So up in Rocky Mountain National Park, just in our, just west of where I live, right here in Colorado, is 416 of the most beautiful, 416 square miles of beautiful acreage that you'll ever find. And it's just a wonderland there. And they had back in 1914, just before Rocky Mountain National Park was made into officially made a national park in 1915, they brought some Arapaho Indians from the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming down to go on a pack trip on horseback throughout what was proposed to be the park and tell the names of the mountains and the places. They talked about a potential Bigfoot sighting. They found, their great grandfather had found a 2-foot human tracks, and it's on Giant Track Mountain now. There's just so many stories that they told of battles with the Apaches and battles with the Shoshone and the Blackfeet. It was incredible, and I just think that would be a great movie. I would love to make a semi-documentary, a movie about that. So yeah, thanks for asking. That's one of many. Problem with asking me that question is I'm curious about everything.
Yeah.
Personal growth is a big thing right now on both Melissa and my bucket list, is just to learn as much as we can about how to be the best version of ourselves.
And your horses, I'm certain, are helping you on that journey. I know
Oh
they
my
do for
goodness.
me.
They
Yeah.
do. They teach us so much.
Oh, so
They're the
much,
best
so
teachers.
much, so much about like how we're conducting ourselves and our energy. And what I notice is like they let me know when I'm rushing. Like we all
Yes.
we rush so much, and I find the horses slow me down. So that's
Yeah.
like a cool little component. But your documentary sounds fantastic.
Oh, that's a bucket list. We'll see.
Yeah,
I
and
would
that's
love to.
you sound a lot like me. It's like there's so many things that I'd like to do in so little time. So
Yeah.
yeah, this conversation has like completely excited me. I really like your
Me
energy.
too.
You have been so
Thank
fun
you.
to talk to. Can you let listeners know where they can find out more information about you and your audiobook production services?
Yes, easy, long words. SkyDance Mountain Skydance, it's one word. Mountain is another, audiobooks. But if you go on SkyDanceMountainAudiobooks.com, you'll find us. SkyDanceMountainAudiobooks.com.
And go check out their packages. Like I said earlier, I took a look at your website, and I think your offerings are fantastic and
Thank
reasonable.
you.
And audio is the future. So I'm glad I now know you and can direct people your way.
Thank you, Carly. I really appreciate that. That's the best part about doing this job, is that we get to meet new people who have very similar passions. I love it. I love it so much.
Absolutely. And thank you for the gift of your time, Brett. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Carly. Bless you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and riding, just like me. Visit my website, carlycadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlycadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlycadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Cade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.